Welcome to the Society Pod, a podcast for entrepreneurs, marketers, and leaders. Here's your host, Jessica Yarmy.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Society Pod. My guest today is a business performance operational mastery consultant. I have never heard that kind of title before, but if anyone could hold that title, it is my guest today. Welcome to the show, Micah Logan.
Well, thank you for having me, Jessica. I appreciate being here. Yes, that is an interesting title, one that I painstakingly put together.
You're just a full purebred kind of entrepreneur. You could say business consultant, you could say business strategist, but you're just always out there building things and doing things. How are you introducing yourself when you meet people these days?
I typically don't use that long title when I introduce myself to people. I just tell them business consultant or a business coach, kind of keep it super simple.
You're putting all of your projects right now under the self-titled Logan Companies. What makes the Logan Companies special, and why should somebody really pursue working together with you?
There are so many business consultants out there who just sound so consultant-y. They tend to not actually speak the language of the entrepreneur. Oftentimes it's because the consultant themselves have not actually done anything in business, been a part of perhaps large companies. They've been a cog in the consultant wheel, but there's a difference between consulting in a company and actually sweating about paying payroll on Friday and it's Wednesday afternoon. And there's a gap in your bank account between how I'm going to pay on Friday and how I'm going to survive and pay everything else the next week. So I think that the thing that makes the Logan Companies unique is that what we do is we kind of blend the intersection of operations and strategy with real practical operator advice for business owners, which often gets lost in the give me 45 seconds of your time Instagram reel shorts where people are trying to just capture your money. No offense to 20-year-olds out there, but 20-year-olds giving you advice and they haven't done anything but sell courses about how to sell courses.
Oh my gosh, the course selling is out of control right now. The coaching landscape is out of control, and maybe the fractional executive space is out of control. My background's marketing, and so if I see fractional CMO, who's never been a real CMO, how do you expect to be able to do that job on a fractional basis, let alone you haven't done that job on a full-time basis? And so it seems like you're in agreement there, but you do more fractional CEO kind of things.
I actually do all three. So I do business coaching. So for businesses who need to be owner assisted, I will help them with whatever specific tension points that they have in their business. I often work with small or medium-sized founders and business owners. Maybe they bought in, so they're not a founder, but they are leading a business. I do business consulting, so I do consulting projects that are either market analytics type of projects where you're trying to define an area that you're trying to go into, put together a proposal to present to someone who you're trying to get money from. I just did a video with Forbes about that. Or they're trying to take on a bigger project and just learn how to expand within their own internal operation. And then, of course, fractional executive work, which is actually really fun for me. Fractional CEO of a company coming in and being able to move it to the next level. It allows me to work with companies across different industries and to be able to actually see what the pain points are. And surprise, surprise, they're almost identical. You just change out a few of the widgets and the focus of the company and what they're delivering, and a lot of the pain points are largely the same. Not non-technical most of the time. It's usually the software of the company that needs to be updated as opposed to the hardware in many cases.
So how do you balance your time between all the different things that you work on for other people and all the different clients you support, and then you still have to build your own business? You still have to build your own personal brand. How do you kind of shuffle your day to support all of those different things?
That is probably the question that I'm asked the most. The answer to that is I have great teams everywhere across the board. So the thing is, a company may not be performing well, but it doesn't mean they don't have a great team. One of the first things I do is triage of the strengths of the company to see who does what well. Are they in the wrong batting order? Does it need to be adjusted? Once I kind of make some of those fundamental changes, people tend to perform much better in roles that they are born for. So the teams that are often with these companies perform well. My involvement with the company is easier to schedule in my own calendar, because oftentimes what I'm doing is I'm helping them solve the bigger problems that they need my expertise for. In terms of my personal scheduling, my calendar, I'm from Boston, so it's wicked complicated. But I do have a time for everything. I triage my calendar into buckets of work time for everything that I do, including my own personal projects. You talked about, because you're a marketing person, branding, personal branding. What do I do for that? I have a time when I write my Forbes articles. I have a time for my own personal newsletter. And then I have a time for when I post my own social media post. Ironically, the benefit of me being so busy is that I've had less time for more formalistic posts recently. And I've been just being me on social media and posting things that I enjoy. I just noticed that there's better interaction with people when you do that. So it's kind of like helped me to just kind of share my personality, which I tend to
mute a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, just a bit.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Like, so you're saying where you are busier, you get into a place where you post faster and maybe you put less time into perfectly polishing. And so then you come across like Micah as opposed to coming across like polished, muted Micah.
That is the most unsurprising thing you've ever heard, and probably what you've coached people on over the years too. But like, yeah, essentially, like I'm traveling to Denver next week to go visit a company that I'm running. So I decided that I'll do like a travel blog, but I'm not editing it. It's just raw, me going, working with the company. I'm just going to show it. I decided that I'm going to just embrace the rawness of like posting and me interacting with people who follow me on social media, whether they've asked for it or not. You're going to get the full, Lebowski out there. The constraints on my time really have forced me into like doing more raw, unedited stuff. It's actually more enjoyable, right? Because you're like, I screwed up, but whatever. I'm just going to go with it.
I think a big part of personal branding and committing the time to personal branding is you have to pursue what comes naturally to you and what you can crank out fairly organically versus if you are someone who loves to write but hates to be on camera. Putting a video time block on your calendar is always going to be moved or it's always going to be canceled. It's hard to get yourself to do something that you don't organically love. That's advice that I share with people regarding like carving out time to do the personal things is like pick the thing that you can bang out really easily and it's like breathing to you. Like I'll jump on the stair climber and bang out a LinkedIn post and it's like nothing versus if I were to do a Forbes article, like you're in that world, like that would take me a week and a half to write because it's not my default platform.
No, it's a good point. I really do enjoy writing more than I thought I would. And I was kind of thrust in this world, right? I didn't like say, hey, I go to school for an English degree and I'm going to become a writer. I just became a writer because of the thought leadership stuff that I was putting out there. And so Forbes came to me and then all of a sudden they're like, well, you share your ideas. We want to see it. And the next thing I know, here I am. I have these ideas. I do have a canvas to paint on. What I notice when I write how I speak. So writing is easy for me. If I'm just, well, this is how I would say it. I'm going to put it in an article like this. Time that gets complicated. I'm writing a piece right now about how the Iran war is going to affect small businesses and how they're going to have to deal with that. So that requires some research just in the historical context of why businesses get affected by that. I mean, outside of that, it's, you're absolutely right. Like, so the camera thing for me is like, some people are like cheesy, like, I'd rather write than be on camera, but I see the utility in both.
Well, and you do share a lot of content about entrepreneurship as well. Do you set certain content pillars for what you are going to post about either on Forbes or LinkedIn or other channels?
I give away my secret. Absolutely. So Forbes, I can tell you that I'm largely going to write about three things. The first one is I love entrepreneurship. I love entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship is super hard and it is complicated because it often involves more mental gymnastics and mental coaching than it involves strategy for the most part. So I write about things that I think are helpful to people who are entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship does not necessarily mean small business owner, right? Entrepreneurs can do other things other than own a small business. However, entrepreneurship requires a certain mindset, especially when things go wrong. So I enjoy writing about the mindset. I enjoy writing about some ways to think and frame issues that come up that affect small business owners. When I write it to small business owners, I write for strategy because there is no strategy and there is an issue with too much information. So I like to distill. I like to take all the information that a small business owner can get out there, of which there is a copious amount of information, and like to distill it down to something that is usable, that they can implement within the next 48 hours. My first order principle with writing to small business owners is what can I implement in 48 hours? Because that is always the issue. Like, what can I press? What lever can I move to actually move the ball forward? And it usually comes down to having to implement something that they're just not familiar with how to implement, or they haven't seen it. Now, the third thing, I am a very abstract thinker, right? So I like to apply abstract stories, concepts, frameworks to entrepreneurship and small business. So what I'll do is I interviewed on my podcast a man named Mark Wood. Mark Wood is an Arctic explorer. I'm interested in the mentality that it took this man who hurt his knee when trying to reach the North Pole, and he still would no Walkman that had died because of the cold, a knee he had hurt, and he still had 200 miles to walk, and like crazy winds with no provisions anywhere near him. He still reached it so that he can call the helicopter. That to me is an abstract story that relates the mindset of an entrepreneur. So like that's the stuff I really enjoy. Like I'll go talk to a physicist if I can apply a principle to entrepreneurship, right? So that's kind of like the three things I like writing about.
I feel like every entrepreneur who's listening should go and immediately follow all of your channels, all of your socials to get all the insights. It's an interesting framing to say you're the distillery. There are so many creators, like we talked about, that like don't have background and are just putting out garbage content. But then there's so many big founders who are out there putting out content, like Sarah Blakely from Spanx. You know, she's putting out content and I love her. But then how much of like what she's saying applies to my year 2 when she's just exited for billions, you know? And so you need to distill in both directions. Here's what you can apply to your world today. So I think that's a fascinating way to define yourself. And maybe we need to add that into your title somehow, as business performance distiller.
No, I think you're absolutely right.
The last time you and I connected, you were a founder, and now you've kind of layered this coaching consultant aspect to your world. How did you get into coaching?
I was in the fitness industry for 20 years, which is why you and I met. We were both speakers at a fitness executive event in Chicago. At year 20, I felt like I had done everything I wanted to do. I wanted to have multiple locations. I had won awards both locally and for the franchise concept that I had created. I've been able to speak about fitness business. Obviously, we were in Chicago, which was also one of my goals of mine. I had groomed trainers to become business owners and trainers of their own in their own right and help create jobs, et cetera, the whole thing. So I had to hit all the check marks I had. But over the years, people saw how I would operate my business. My business was very structured. I was showing someone the other day, because I still keep it because it's a work of art. My programming that I had for the studio system, right? Which was every month had a goal, and then the week had a goal, and then the days. It was beautiful. It was a work of art. I would walk into my studio, and the studio would be spotless clean. It worked like a charm. People loved to be there, the clients, the employees, et cetera, et cetera. It was a machine. And I remember having a photographer, a friend of mine, who went down to my studio to take some photos and do a sizzle reel for me. He walked in and he goes, I got to just say, man, he's like, your business is like humming, right? Like, he's like, everyone knew what to do. He's like, I was like shocked. So I thought to myself, so people saw that. And so over the years, people would ask me questions. I always got questions. Micah, how do I do this? Can you give me your insights on that? Let me get your take on these 3 things. I had never even thought about becoming a business coach. I never thought about becoming a fitness coach. So it's like 2 things I'm doing that I had never thought about doing: a business coach or a fitness coach. I didn't even know what personal training was when I first started, okay? Like over 20 years ago. I'm from the hood, Jessica. There was no fitness coaching careers in the hood. Before I sold my company, I had given people advice. I was like, I would love to actually do this, apply the principles of coaching that I've used in the fitness world to the business world. Everything I've learned. I've been unsuccessful, and at times extraordinarily unsuccessful in fitness. Then I've also been very successful in fitness. I learned stuff along the way. So I wanted to like apply those principles to people in business. When I started having conversations with people in other industries, multiple different industries, and they were experiencing the same problem, I'm like, this is something I can do something with, right? I can actually take some of the principles that I've learned and that I know from my time doing like in fitness and everything else I was doing to try to apply these things to other business owners. And so the opportunity came when I sold my company back in October of 23, and I was going to take a month off, which I did from work because I didn't know what to do because fitness was my whole life for 20 years. I just kind of like started expanding it. Then in terms of like the fractional work and stuff like that, like it started in 2020. I had a company come up to me and hire me. They're like, we need a CEO. We've seen your work. We'd love to have you do it. I was like, no. The answer is no. I'm not going to run your business too. They were like, please, right? Pretty please. And I was like, so I did it. It opened up the gates for me to like learn about this whole fractional executive thing, right? So like that's kind of like how it started.
Isn't it funny that you often get pulled into the business you end up building, right? Like because there's existing demand for it, or people are like asking you to do it and you're like, oh, okay, fine. What do most business owners get wrong with their business operationally? And when you're starting with a client or a business, where do you start? Like with like digging into a business and like identifying where those problems are. Like first day, kind of have a look at, okay, it's this and it's this and it's this, and here's how we're going to fix those things.
That's a great question. What do business owners get wrong? It's typically the same thing. It's money. Because everyone has grown up with a different principle about how to manage it. They were told what it is, what it isn't. But most people have never been instructed on what cash flow means and how to manage it, and how to do FP&A, financial planning and analysis for like their company, to kind of see like how the cash is actually going to flow into the future and what that means and how to make adjustments based on that. Generally speaking, the thing that I see business owners get wrong the most is cash flow, managing that. The second common issue that I see across businesses is leadership development. The final thing that I see, generally speaking, is the lack of structure, organization, accountability, and planning. Those are typically the three things that are the most common across the board. And if they have one, they typically don't have the other two, not to a substantial degree. To your second question, what do I do when I first get into a company? I sit there exasperated and I'm just like, okay, let me pull this thing apart. So I try to make a list of what they do right first, as opposed to going to what's wrong. I'm like, okay, well, what do you guys do well? And I interview everybody. I do one-on-ones. What do you think the company does well? What do you think the company does wrong? If the qualitative data I get from those interviews, all the data points are like plotted and oriented around like central themes, then I address those themes first, because typically those are the bugaboos. But I always ask myself deeper questions that go down a little bit beyond just what a person's saying. So for instance, someone in shipping could say, well, my biggest frustration is that people don't listen to me when I tell them about orders that come in, and it takes forever for me to get information. That's the frustration about doing your job. But someone in management is going to say something like, my biggest issue is that I'm trying to get information to the back and I can't. I have to do three things, and then I have these meetings to go to. And by the time I do it, the time has passed. It's like the next day. So those two different positions are talking about the same issue, but they're talking about it differently, of course, based off of their respective responsibility. But the commonality is that there's a system failure there. There's a break in that communication chain. So identifying the deeper issue and why that affects them both is important. And then use the same solution to try to see if it solves the problem for both of them, right? And if it does, you have yourself a winner.
It does always seem like there's the surface level issue, and then there's the issue behind the issue. As you have individual conversations, like how do you get someone to really like open up to you so that you can see the issue behind the issue? Because I think a lot of times you're going to get that fast self-preservation kind of surface level issue, and the issue behind the issue really is the one that needs to be solved, but it's the one that's hardest to say out loud. So how do you get people to like have that trust in you to like really get to the issue behind the issue?
So really it comes down to the question you ask the person in front of you who's expressing the issue. So what I would do is I would say, instead of asking them where the problems are, what frustrates you the most about this company? I would ask them, if you were me, what would you change first? So let's create some first order principles. And so like we center the first order principles of turnaround of a company around how the employee executive would change the company itself. So I want to know what they would do to make a difference in the company from the beginning. The reason why I ask that is because now I'm putting them in the position of having to look through my eyes. Because if I'm going to look through your eyes, I first want you to see through my eyes, so that when things start changing, you understand exactly why the changes I made were made. If we are on the same page with the things that are going to be changed, as an example, one of the companies I'm the fractional CEO of, I cut expenses 10%. What does cutting expenses of a multi-million-dollar company of 10% do to a company? It flattens it. It's only 10%, but that's a big change, right? That means people are probably no longer working there. It also means that there's waste that the company was actually involved in that also went out the window. But sometimes getting rid of waste makes people's jobs a little bit more complicated. So you also have to think about the second order effects of getting rid of waste and what that means for the company. Is it going to make the company kind of slow down a bit? So what I do is I ask a person what they would do if they were in my position, and then I ask them to explain it. What's your rationale? Tell me why you would change that. What does it mean to change that? So once I understand kind of how employees think about that. And then I do the same thing with co-executives. The executives actually give me a report of what they believe is wrong with the firm from the beginning, where they believe the issues are, where they think that the company is headed in the next 2 quarters if the issues don't change. And I want something simple like an executive summary, 2-page. I want to see their ability to be flexible, forecast, and admit real problems. And so I take how the executive sees and how the employees see if that lines up. And then I can start making decisions based off of that.
Do you see any generational trends within the employees that you speak to regarding, passion or the willingness to take accountability, or anything that you could kind of generalize in terms of different populations?
Yes. What I see is that younger generations, when I say younger generations, I'm talking about, frankly, millennial and Gen Z. What I'm noticing is Gen Z and younger millennials tend to need to be motivated by the meaning behind the choice of what you do, and to be motivated by how this would affect, generally speaking, the environment that they work in, right? They're very culturally sensitive. And when I say culturally sensitive, I don't mean diverse cultural human background. I mean culturally sensitive to the corporate culture and how it makes them feel and how they perceive the corporation after a culture has shifted. But older individuals, baby boomers who might still be running their companies, or Gen Y, tend to be a little bit more focused on trying their best in a hard-nosed sense in some cases to try to move the needle, like through sheer will, not utilizing the assets that they have in their employees well. And I think that it's important to take a step back. If you think about it from, like you're an economist, we sell as humans, part of the capitalist market is that we sell our labor to corporations to use as an asset to the corporation. Corporations hire people because that labor is an asset. Are you taking full advantage of the fact that you hired a person who's supposed to be an asset to you? And do you assetize their labor in a sense that actually makes sense, like either in the right batting order or put them in the right positions, or do you train them? What I notice is that Gen Y and baby boomers are less likely to have a fulsome training protocol in their company to bring people along, because you should have come in and known that, right? Or in my day, I kind of just asked if I wanted to know something and I just hit it. Gen Z millennials tend to straddle the fence. If you're a geriatric millennial like myself, then you're kind of more like Y-ish. If you are a younger millennial, you might be more culturally sensitive to the cultural aspect of the company. And if you're Gen Z, you are definitely culturally sensitive to how the company operates and runs and how you feel like you're being treated. There is a gap. They want care first, and then they want efficiency second. Balancing those two things in a company is tough. But what I find actually breaks that gap or breaks the issue is if you explain your rationale, why, people will agree or disagree, but they can't tell you that you didn't communicate it to them. If you have genuine care for the people who work in your company, then that will come through in whatever decision you make, even if it's negative to a certain degree. There's a reason why layoffs and terminations happen, because they have to.
It's interesting how you kind of broke it down between the generations, and where you're emphasizing culture in a Gen Z kind of world or a young millennial, where you come in and you see that the culture needs to change. How do you make a change like that when you know you have those kind of employees who are sensitive to cultural change?
Extreme communication, proactive communication. You have to be an extraordinary communicator to be a leader these days. And if you're not an extraordinary communicator, then your ability to lead your company is going to suffer. You have to be able to tell people what you're going to do what you're going to do, and then tell them why you did it. If you can't do those three things, and if you can't communicate why, then that's going to be a problem for people, because ultimately people seek understanding and meaning in their work. Work is hard, but people still want to work towards something. As a leader, it's our job to expound on what we're doing and the rationale why. I find too many leaders of small businesses oftentimes make decisions without a specific rationale. It's a gut feeling, and I get it. Sometimes you have to make a gut call, but most of the time, what you should be able to do is to rationalize why you're doing something. Even if your rationale is incorrect, you should still be able to stipulate.
Yeah, that's so true. I want to move to you as an entrepreneur, both in your current efforts as well as your past efforts. Did you feel called to be an entrepreneur from day one? Because it does seem like you are a purebred entrepreneur. Have you always had like entrepreneurship in your blood?
I think so. I come from an entrepreneurial family. My grandfather was a real estate investor on my mother's side. My mother was a realtor. I don't know if I've ever seen myself as an entrepreneur, but I saw it as the obvious choice, which may be. But I've always been an abstract thinker, and I knew that I wanted to solve problems. I think that puts me in the realm of entrepreneurship. And then when I realized that I can do it with my brain, it moved me further into that realm. And then when I realized that it was the things that I was implementing was working, like in fitness, and that people actually were attracted to what I built personally, that it affected them personally, and that they actually paid money for it, then I was like, well, this is something, right? I think once I saw the results of my work, I got more called to do it. Like once I saw that people were affected by what I was putting out in the world, I was called to do it. I was invited to give a talk at a local job fair. I had been a business owner for some time. I hired people, fired them, promoted them, groomed them, trained them, right? All this stuff, all the things. When I was leaving, I was walking out and this guy grabbed my arm. And he looked me in my eye. He's just like, hey, he's like, can you help me out? And I was like, help you out with what? What do you need? And he said, I'm looking for a job. I'm like, what do you do? He kind of like went down his list of things that he did. But he's just like, I listened to what you said because I was just talking about how to orient yourself towards success in that meeting. He told me that he was encouraged by it. And I was fine to help him if I could in my little lane of life that I occupy. But the fact that you can have that effect on people, you don't forget it, right? So I've taken time and spoken to kids in undeserved communities about entrepreneurship, why entrepreneurship is important, and why it's important not to fake it till you make it. I hate that phrase. You should just be it, right? Spend time being it so that you don't have to fake it. And nobody can take that away. It's like you win a championship. You're always a champion. No one can take that trophy away from you, right? You just have to be what it is that you're purporting to be in public, right? My record is out there. It's very public. You can search for wherever you want, right? It's very important to me that my record stays intact. My resolve got strengthened when I saw the effects I was having on people that would either watch me work or the people who would experience my service or products.
So in your talks, when you're talking about orienting yourself toward success, like how did you orientate yourself toward your success as an entrepreneur?
Jessica, you're already going deep on these podcasts. I love it. Like I'm on like Dr. Phil and Oprah at the same time. How did I orient myself to success? I was fortunate. I had one advantage. And that advantage was that I had two parents who were married all my life. They loved me, they cared for me, and they oriented me with basic fundamental principles of human living and how to treat people and how to present myself in the world. It's very important. That's a privilege. I'm going to start with that. I oriented myself towards success by focusing on mastering myself the best I could. To me, when you master your skills and yourself the best you can, once you realize there's a better way that you should operate in the world, you should take that path because it just makes you a little bit better. I'll give you an example. When I first started my fitness company, I did in-home training. 2 years after working in the gym and slugging it in the gym like all trainers did when they first start, I started an in-home training business. And I started developing a larger and larger clientele. Some of my clients were extraordinarily wealthy. There's a scene in The Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith when he's about to make the transformation, when he's walking by Wall Street, right? He asks the guy going in with the Ferrari, he goes, what is it that you do and how is it that you do it? And the guy said, oh, I'm a stockbroker, right? And you're just like, I don't know what a stockbroker is, but that is the thing I'm going to do to get that Ferrari, right? And so for me, I would go into my clients' homes and I would see them. I wouldn't just be training them. I would look at everything. One of the curses I have is that I'm too observant. I see everything. Every single one of my wealthy clients, when I would walk in there, had the stock market on the television. Some kind of investment show, something that was teaching them about finance or just informing them about the financial world. 100% of them, every single session. I'll start watching the same channels. And I did. And I didn't understand a daggone word that those people said on the finance channel. But fortunately for me, there was a website that was called Investopedia that existed. So I kid you not, I used to take a sheet of paper and I would write down every single word, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of words that I did not know. I would then look them up and I would define each one of them. And then I would find and look up the principle behind how it works. Every single one, 300 finance terms. And then I did that over and over again. I'm willing to do that because I wanted to master. I wanted to learn how to think how money worked, how it worked in the real world, across countries, in this country, in the U.S. economy, in business, generally speaking, and why big businesses made the decisions that they made. And so I started looking at that and I studied it. I had clients who are entrepreneurs who were very successful. And I would ask them questions about elements of their business that didn't necessarily go one-to-one with fitness, so that when I wanted to expand my business, I could apply those principles in my business. One of my clients had a $400 or $500 million real estate fund that they had grown. So I thought to myself, okay, what can I ask my client that would actually translate to fitness? What do you do? Like, there's no fitness fund, right? Right? Because that's not how money flows in fitness. So I thought about it. And so what I did was I said, how do you prove to your customers that they're getting the results that you promised them when they first invested in you? Because that's a principle that actually is involved in fitness. He laid out how he does it and what he gives them. I took that, modified it to fitness, and my clients loved it. Every aspect of what they did, they loved it. I gave them essentially an ROI statement on what they're paying me. I did that with regularity, to the detail, without hiding anything, to show them how effective their investment in themselves was actually going. It worked out, successfully. So I've always been a person who pushed myself to learn. I'm an avid reader. Like, I like to study concepts, social economics, human behavior. I read typically nonfiction, but like, I've always been interested in studying more and learning more about the world. I can't stop learning. It's kind of a bit of a curse, and it could be ADD, undiagnosed, but I'll figure it out later.
Of course it is. Of course it is. I have one more Dr. Phil question, and then we'll end with some easy ones. You mentioned self-mastery and the pursuit of self-mastery as important to entrepreneurship, which I think is totally true. And then you also talked about like observing and learning from others. How do those two things kind of meet in the middle? Because you have outside inputs, but then you also have the inputs that, it needs to be true to you, or you need to apply it to you so that it can come together and make sense. So like, how do you kind of balance between those two sets of information?
Fundamental filter, basically a question filter when you're bringing in information, helps to solve that issue. Asking yourself, why don't I know this now? How can I know this better? And what does it mean for me to learn this information? I believe in cash, knowledge, attitude, skills, and habits. That to me was a fundamental aspect of kind of getting that information, was to be less ignorant than I was before. When my first fitness business failed, like early on, it wasn't until many years later that I was reading a book and saw a quote by Thomas Sowell that said, it takes an immense amount of knowledge to understand the extent of your ignorance. So for me, I didn't even know what questions to ask to get the answers that I wanted to get. I had to kind of start asking myself questions like, what is it don't I know? The answer, generally speaking for us, is everything until you know it to a certain degree. You can perceive that you know it, or you can actually know it because you studied it. And so I would ask myself, do I really know this? And why is it important for me to know this? Is it applicable to what I'm doing? And if it is, then I'm going to do whatever I need to do to know it better than anybody else.
What is your CASH acronym again?
Knowledge, attitude, skills, habits. Cash with a K.
With a K. Okay. I like that. What is your proudest moment as an entrepreneur?
Proudest moment as an entrepreneur? That's a great question.
Besides having me on your podcast, which I know was a life highlight for you.
That was life-changing for me. It was. No, it was cool. What's so funny? I read about you before we actually met. So I read about you, of course, because of what you were doing with your stuff. And then when I met you in Chicago, I was like, this is the face behind the name. And we were able to talk. We talked for like the entire afternoon. So that was awesome. My proudest moment, probably selling my company is one of them. The recognitions of awards that I've won is another one. But I think, generally speaking, that I contributed to changing people's lives in what I did previously. That means way more to me. When people ask you for advice because they perceive that you're doing something differently than they're doing is they are instinctively honoring the fact that you put the work in to be worthy enough to ask you questions. And I was never a person who had a coach. When you live in the poorest part of the city, there's no business coach, right? To ask, like, who do you ask? The drug dealer who's successful, right? You kind of push through until you have a baseline of knowledge or people around you who are comfortable answering the question. So I think my proudest moment as an entrepreneur is like a composite. It's some of the successes I've had that are more public, and the more private ones are the quiet questions that people ask me because they find me at least worthy enough to answer their question.
Yeah, reputation. I love it. If you were not a business coach, business consultant, business strategist, what would you be doing?
I'd be touring the country with you with our own podcast.
Like this. Okay. We would be doing face-to-face podcasts with other entrepreneurs. How would we structure it?
It would be like Earn Your Leisure. We'd have entrepreneurs on there who have been very successful, like Jeff Bezos. Like that interview would be so dope. It would be unreal, right? Like having him talk about why he built. Tell me about the garage, like when you first started, like Amazon, and what that was like. You know, Bill Gates, like you were selling out of your trunk, like Microsoft CDs, like out of your trunk. Over the years, you built $1 billion business. Did you feel it coming? We'd kill that.
I think we would. I would be the buy the book questions, and then you would come in with the color commentary and the sound effects.
I like that.
So that's how it would be structured.
If I wasn't a business coach, what would I be doing? That is a good question. You mean in business, like, or just in life? What would I be doing?
Yeah, in life. Where would your time be going?
I don't really have a good answer for that. I don't even know.
Isn't that the interesting part of entrepreneurship is you have selected the thing that you would want to do the most? And so it's hard to think of an alternate.
Do you get a lot of that when you ask that question?
Because what would I be doing if I wasn't working in fitness and doing marketing things?
I don't know. You're so positive, very extraordinarily positive. Like what you see on this podcast from Jessica is literally her away from the camera. It's unreal. Like she's so happy. I want to study her like in the university setting, like a lab to just try to figure this out.
You know what it takes? It takes a couple cocktails and then you get the real unscripted negativity, burn everything down kind of mode. So,
okay, there you go. You get Tywin Lannister.
Exactly. So we'll have cocktails before we podcast, just so it's really, really authentic.
I like that. So I do archery, right?
Oh, you do archery?
I do. So 3 fun facts about what I do kind of like for fun. Like it's archery. I'm big into that. I always wanted to be a competitive archer. And play pickleball, which is like my new kind of thing. And then when I started tracking my calories, I was like, holy moly, you can burn calories playing pickleball. Don't listen to the people on YouTube, okay? I burn like 1,300 calories a night. It was like 2 hours. And then lastly, I am a human behavior geek. So I got certified in human behavior tactics. This is kind of a weird thing to get certified in, but like body language reading, stuff like that. Like I know that some people think it's a full science, but that's kind of like my jam.
I like the mix of hobbies. I have not really gotten into the pickleball trend, but I know it's big. And as I'm going out to HFA next week, I know it will be big and talked about there for sure. Is there anything that's top of mind with you that you're digging into, that you're working on, that you're researching, that we have not talked about that you want to put out into the world?
Yeah. So what I'm working on. So I finished writing my first book, and my first book is called The Brown Box: How to Fix What's Broken in Your Business Before It Breaks You. It's a book about how to turn around a company. The mistake in thinking, I think, for entrepreneurs is that you have to be sinking or like losing money to turn around your business. Turning around your business is simply running it to the most optimally efficient level possible. The book specifically is about the time I closed my first business, walking down the stairs when I put in thousands of dollars in I can't tell you how many hours with only a brown box of my personal effects in the box. So that's how it starts. I then transitioned to that into like the turnaround of the business, right? I introduced my turnaround method. Turnaround method is each letter stands for one of the steps in how to turn around your company. But each chapter has a specific story for either myself or a client I work with to help them turn around their business. And so there's a story and then there's an applicable principle that goes along with it. I finished the book with leadership development, which is one of the biggest issues in small businesses. You know, getting over that mental hurdle for folks can be really, really tough. So that chapter has a lot of research associated with leadership, specifically in small businesses. So that's what I'm working on right now. Well, I finished it. It just went through a developmental edit. And so I'm looking for a literary agent at the moment who's interested in the business genre, nonfiction. That's going to be coming out soon. I have also kind of created a cash flow cohort. So the cash flow cohort is a cohort for business owners who need to improve their cash flow management abilities and how they actually do it. It's a combination of hands-on work that we're doing, like in this very small group, and looking at their specific cash flow needs, creating a plan, devising a plan, and by the end of the 4 weeks, have the ability to actually kind of manage the cash flow after that.
Can I get a signed copy of the brown box to give away to a listener?
Absolutely. That would be great. I would love that.
Perfect. I so appreciate this conversation, and I appreciate you being a entrepreneurial connection, and we've had some great mind melds over the years. So thank you so much for sharing everything that you did with us here on the Society Pod.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I appreciate your audience. Thank you for listening. Looking forward to the next adventure.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Society Pod.